Chapter 7. Driving through rural upstate in the winter, Decker passed landscapes of white and brown, so different from the verdant fields that were in place half a year ago. Crops of lettuce, kale, cabbage, onions, beets, carrots, and oversized pumpkin had been stocked in every farmer's market as recently as late November. Snowfall had come later this year, plus it wasn't as harsh as last winter. The farming communities varied in size and modernity, from those that employed the latest equipment to oxen, yoke, and plows. Decker didn't know where Elijah's parents fit in, but the phone number suggested they didn't eschew electricity. Rena was staring out the passenger window as Decker waited until he had a chance to safely pass a buggy. Another world, she said, not unlike the one you encountered when we first met. Decker gave her a hesitant smile. A little different. At least these communities are producing something. Rena slugged him. We produce scholars, and there has been a real sea change in the Orthodox yeshiva world. Just saying, more and more of them are encouraging the students to pursue advanced secular education. It only took what, about 200 years? Now you're being contentious. I don't deny it. It's fun to tease you. Decker paused. Do you ever miss the insular life? No, it was what I needed at the time, but I didn't like being disconnected from the real world. Even at the time, I knew I wasn't going to stay. I'll tell you one thing that surprised me. I love living in a small town. It's so manageable. And with the colleges nearby, I feel we get the best of both worlds. What about you? Decker gave the question some real thought. I must admit, it's still an adjustment. I often wake up with the anticipation of what's going to await me at work. And then I realize it's going to be same old, same old. You didn't expect to be called down to a crime scene yesterday. True, but even so, there's not a lot of detection work involved. So you think it's suicide? Probably. But you don't know why. No, I don't. If I hunt around, I'm sure I'll find out he had depression issues. It doesn't seem like a spur-of-the-moment decision. And unless someone wants to look further, it's really not up to me to find out why he killed himself. What about those pages he found tucked away in his desk? Not really my business either, unless it's a suspicious death. What if they had something to do with the suicide? Decker thought about it. Let me get back to you on that one. He smiled. I'm not complaining, Rena. I like the quiet life. I paused. It's certainly better than being shot at, but obviously that can happen anywhere. This is indeed the truth. She leaned over and kissed his cheek. Can you stop off the next Dunkin' Donuts? I'd like some fresh coffee. Sure. They found one 10 minutes later on the main strip. There was a Dunkin' Donuts, a DQ, a two-show movie theatre, a library, a grocery store, a store specializing in livestock feed and equipment, a dress and fabric store, in an appliance store, new and used, a city hall, and several diners, all of them specializing in pie. The parking was diagonal except for the hitching posts for the buggies. The population included some Amish, some moderns, and some in between. You want a cup? Rena asked. Thanks, I can get it. No, I'll do it. I want to stretch my legs. She came back a few minutes later with coffee. Here you go. Rena took out a large paper bag that had been brought from home. Want a sandwich? No, fine. This is fine. No, thanks. This is fine. Rena took out an apple, made a blessing, and bit it. Sure you don't want anything to eat? Decker patted his stomach. Does it look like I missed a lot of meals? You look great for my age. I didn't say that. You thought that. I did not. We both look great. No asterisks for our age necessary. Easy for you to say. You're way younger than I am. Even more proof why you must look great. She leaned over and kissed his cheek again. You snagged yourself one hot, terrific babe. The Wolf homestead was 10 minutes from the main highway, in a patchwork of snowed-under farms. There were some greenhouses, and what they grew behind the glass pane was anyone's guess. Judging from the farmers' market, the hothouses probably had tomatoes, cucumbers, beans, and squashes. There was also chicken coops, pigsties, and sheep cotes. No hogs in sight, but the sheep were grazing, chowing down whatever brown grass and detritus remains from the fall crops. While the area certainly wasn't Gainesville, it was vaguely reminiscent of Decker's childhood, simpler times and simple needs, and much, much quieter. As they inched closer to the appointed address, the wolf spread fanned out into lots of acres, with a barn, 2 windmills, several chicken coops, and a sty. There was a corral and paddock, but no horses in sight. Around 20 sheep roamed around the grounds. Beyond the farming area were orchards and deciduous trees that were bare at this time of year. From the distance, they looked like apple trees. New York ranked second in U.S. apple production, just behind Washington State. The main house was polished looking, 3 stories fashioned from white wood siding and fieldstone, and fronted by a dirt driveway that held on old black Lincoln Town car. Decker parked behind the car, killed the motor, and he and Rena walked up to the front door. He knocked, and a woman in her late 40s or early 50s answered the door. She was around 5'5" with blue eyes, apple cheeks, and a sprinkle of freckles from her nose. Across her nose, small wrinkles and spiderweb lines framed her mouth and her eyes. She wore a long brown dress with long sleeves. Most of her light brown hair was tucked into some kind of netting. Rena had on a green sweater and a denim skirt that covered her knees in black fashion boots. Her dark hair had been skewered under a black beret, while the 2 women weren't dressed similarly. They both were dressed modestly. Decker took out his identification. I'm Detective Decker of the Greenberry Police Department. The woman nodded with her eyes on Rena's face. You're here to talk about Elijah. Yes, man. I'm very sorry for your loss, and I'm also sorry to intrude at this time, but it's better if we talk now. This is my wife, Rena Decker. Rena held out her hand. I'm very sorry for your loss, Mrs. Wolfe. Ruth Ann. The woman touched Rena's hand with barely any pressure. Come in, please. Leading them into a small and immaculately clean and homey living room. She pointed to a sofa upholstered in a soft muttered orange print. Can I get either of you some tea or coffee? I'm fine, thank you, Decker said. She turned to Rena. Mrs. Decker? It's Rena, and tea would be lovely, thank you. 5 minutes later, she came out carrying a tray. She poured tea for both Rena and Decker, just in case, Detective. Thank you. She gave a brief smile. My husband and son should be in soon. I'm making lunch. We adhere to a strict schedule, otherwise things don't get done. Can I help? Rena asked. Ruth Ann looked at her. Forgive my boldness, but you're Jewish, aren't you? Yes, I am. You're dressed differently than the others. You mean like Jews in Square Town? Yes, I do dress differently from them. I was thinking more like the Jews in Muncie. Jews run the gamut in their religiosity. Some might consider me fanatical, while others would consider me heretical. I can understand that. I came along to keep Detective Decker company. Rena stood, teacup in hand. Perhaps it would be better for him to talk to your husband without my presence. Let me help you in the kitchen. It's probably a place where we're both familiar. The woman nodded, of course. Rena gave a quick glance to Decker and followed Ruth Ann into the kitchen. The woman immediately picked up a knife and began chopping vegetables for a salad. Rena said, Would you like me to do that? Ruth Ann immediately put down the knife and turned her back to Rena. She placed her hand over her eyes. Rena couldn't hear her crying, but she could see her shoulders heaving. I'm so sorry. Ruth Ann waved her hand in the air. I'm fine. She pivoted back, still her eyes wet. I'm all right. Yes, you can chop the vegetables. Put them in the bowl. My men like a big salad. Silence ensued for the next minute. As Rena chopped, Ruth Ann took out a pan and 4 chops. She said, How many children do you have? Between the 2 of us, we have 4 children. They're all grown. Married, 2 engaged. We also have a foster son who has parents but stay with us for around 3 years. We're still very close. And you? 5. I paused. We have 5 children. Elijah was number 2. I heard he was a brilliant boy. He was always bright. Rena nodded and began dicing a tomato. Bright, but not brilliant. At least not right away. Ruth then looked up at the ceiling. Elijah changed when he was 14. He was riding in the back seat of a car along with his older brother and friend who was driving. A long pause. It was a terrible accident. The driver was killed and my older son Jacob broke his left leg, but he was otherwise okay, praise God. Elijah was wearing a seatbelt, but there was no impact. He was in a coma for 2 weeks. We almost lost him. It was touch and go. She recited the story with a flat voice. Rena said that must have been so earth-shattering. At the time, I thought it was the worst thing that could happen to a parent. Now I see I was wrong. Ruth Ann put the chop in an oiled pan. From the aroma, Rena knew it was pork. She kept chopping vegetables, but stopped drinking the tea. Even though silly, it was hard to be around the smell. Elijah changed after that. Ruth Ann continued. Before the accident, he was friendly, popular, and outgoing. Afterwards, he became withdrawn and quiet, very uncommunicative. He buried himself in a world of numbers. She flipped the meat over, grease splattering on the stovetop. My husband is a very laconic man. He always thought that Elijah was a frivolous boy. He and Elijah used to butt heads all the time. After the accident, my husband was pleased with the change in his attitude. He thought the accident had shook some sense into the boy, showed him that the world wasn't a silly place. He was pleased that Elijah had become so serious. She shook her head, but I knew something was wrong. Elijah wouldn't talk to me except to say he was fine and his perspective had changed. I paused. He stopped going out. He stopped seeing his friends. He stopped doing anything social. She threw up her hands. Then she placed the pork chops on a paper towel to drain the grease and turn off the fire. When it came for college, Ezra wanted him to stay close to home and go to community college, which is just 10 minutes from here. That way he could still help with the farm. That's what his brother did. I wanted him near to help keep an eye out. But it seemed Elijah had entered some kind of state math contest. It caught both of us by surprise that he even knew about such things, let alone took the initiative and entered it without knowing about it. She divided the chops into 2 plates. He came in first place. That must have made you so proud. It did. But it was a mixed bag. We're meaning Mennonites. We keep a low profile. After the contest, the letters began to arrive. Full scholarships from Harvard and Princeton and MIT and so many others. People found out. People began to talk. It's hard when you're a private family and you're suddenly thrust into the spotlight, even a good spotlight. She nodded. I had reservations about sending him away. I didn't want him holed up in some small dorm room working with formulas during all his waking hours. Her eyes moistened. I wanted him to have a meaningful life with a wife and children in his own land. I understand, Rena said. Ruth Ann regarded her fierce eyes. Do you? In traditional communities, family is everything. Yes, it is. Not that it matters now. She stared up at the ceiling. I really lost Elijah 6 years ago. It would be one thing if he had been happy with his new life, but he seemed so, I don't know how to describe it. He became so withdrawn and secretive, almost paranoid. But I found out that sometimes people can be that way after brain injuries. Rena nodded. His only focus was his maths. His world became very small. He wanted to go to Princeton because they have top maths department and they had this professor who Elijah wanted to study with. Ezra refused. He didn't want a big university to subvert our values and lead him into a life that we didn't approve of. Need Loft was a compromise. It was an hour away and also had an excellent math department. Plus there was another professor that Elijah said he'd work with. Did he give you a name? No, after the accident he didn't talk to us beyond the basics. After much consideration, Ezra allowed him to go to Need Loft, but only after he worked a year in the farm because he was only 16. So he worked this year without complaint and then he left. A long pause. But he never really came back. She bit her lower lip. During his first year, he came for Christmas and Easter, and then she shrugged. We never saw him out unless I visited. Never heard from him unless I called. I got a cell phone so I could text him. It was the most likely way he'd answer me. What about his father? Did he call him? I do believe they have exchanged a word in the past 2. I do believe they haven't exchanged a word in the past 2 years. She turned to Rena. If you have children, you know that they can be very different from one another. Absolutely. So there you have it. Ruth Ann paused. Still, even with all the changes, I can't understand why he would kill himself. He never seemed depressed. His world had become mass, but he seemed to be like what he was doing. He seemed to be all right. The last time I talked to him, he even seemed lighter of heart. Shows you what I know. It's not a matter of knowing, Mrs. Wolf. The mind is mysterious. Even when people seem transparent, we know they're not. Your husband. A long pause. Is he talking to people about Elijah? I believe he is. You can certainly ask him questions. Not in front of my husband. Rena paused. I'll give you his cell number if you like. Why not? Ruth Ann took out a scrap of paper and a pencil and Rena gave the number. You never know what you need, right? Not that I've ever known what to ask him. She folded the number and placed it on her pocket. Thank you. Can I ask you when you last spoke with Elijah? It was a month ago. His research was still going well. He didn't seem at all down. Maybe he had a setback. If he had, it certainly wouldn't have told me about it. Her eyes leaked to tears. Now it really is in the past. Are you done with the salad? Rena nodded. Do you have dressing for the salad? I'll be happy to toss it. Just a little olive oil and lemon. Sure. Rena began mixing the greens. Ruth Ann wiped her eyes. I know that God has tests for all of us, and I have no idea why he tested me, but that's all right. I'm strong. Elijah was weak, even as a boy. He always depended on Jacob to get things done. Why would God test such a weak boy? Surely he can pick on stronger people. Rena shrugged. Sometimes our understanding as well as our faith eludes us. Isn't that the truth? She turned to Rena. I am so angry. I'm angry at God. I'm angry at Elijah. I'm angry at Ezra. I'm angry at the world, and it isn't good. I have children. I can't be this angry and do right by them. She stared at the ceiling. I just don't know where to turn or what to do. When my first husband died, I was very angry as well. I had 2 little boys to take off and I couldn't see how I could manage, but I did. How? The passage of time. Ultimately, I reconciled with God. I didn't want to lose my faith because selfishly it was helpful to me. Ruth Ann didn't answer. They both heard a screen door open and close. She said, the boys are here. Can You take the salad out for me? Of course. Ruth Ann looked at her. I'm assuming you'll tell your husband what I told you. I want you to tell him, but I don't want Ezra to know what I told you. Whatever you want. And if you want to keep everything confidential, I won't mention it to Peter, Detective Decker. I'll tell him I'll tell him we talked about food. No, tell him everything. Maybe I'll help him understand Elijah, because I certainly didn't understand my son at all. Chapter 8. McAdams ignored the doorbell. The Deckers went home, and nobody except the police department knew he was in town. But by the third time he was irritated. He rose from the dining room table where he had spread out his papers and books. Maybe they were expecting a package, or maybe one of the children had dropped by for a pop-in visit, although he suspected that they had keys. Most likely it was a nuisance call. To him, all calls were nuisances. Swinging open the door, he was face to face with Malin Euler. She was dressed in a windbreaker over a thick sweater, black jeans, and high tops on her feet. Her hands were covered, but her head was bare. He tried to hide his surprise, but he suspected he wasn't doing a good job. Hi there, he stepped outside. Detective Decker isn't in. Can I help you? Actually, I came to see you. I paused. Sure, if you give me a minute, I'll phone the station house and we'll talk down there. It's personal. Okay, his mind was racing. He looked at his watch. Wow, it's past noon. No wonder I'm hungry. Care to join me? She smiled. It didn't seem angry or happy, just a facial gesture. He shrugged. While you decide, I'll get my coat and shoes. You could invite me in. I'll just be a moment. He closed the door in her face and immediately called Decker's cell. It rang 4 times before he picked up. McAdams said, Sorry to bother you. Are you with Elijah's parents? Yes. Is everything all right? Malin Euler just showed up at my doorstep, rather your doorstep, wanting to talk to me. McAdams started lacing up his boots. It doesn't take a genius to figure out where I'm staying, but it does take a modicum of effort. Plus, she doesn't want to talk at the station house. She says it's personal, and in case you're wondering, I haven't invited her inside, but I did invite her to lunch. He put on his jacket and glove. Is that okay? Seems reasonable. Save the receipt. We'll pay for your expenses. Find out what's on her mind. How's it going with you? I'll let you know when I get back. Call me if you have any questions. Will do. He clicked off his cell phone and walked outside. Let's go towards campus. More places and choices. What are you in the mood for? Whatever you want. Her voice was testing. I'm not hungry. Okay, let's just walk and we'll find something. You could have invited me inside. It's not my home and it's not my place. I'm sure Detective Decker wouldn't have minded. Maybe not, but he wasn't here to make the decision. McAdams stopped his face. Or if you don't want to eat, we can talk on a park bench. It's a little cold, but I'm dressed for it. Why don't you trust me inside the house? Are you that arrogant to think I'm going to throw myself at you? McAdams laughed. I am arrogant, but that was the last thought on my mind. Look, Malin, I'm not officially on the case, but I'm not officially off the case. If you want to talk at the station house and you don't want to if you don't want to talk at the station house and you don't want to talk in the restaurant, pick a place as long as it's semi-public. I'm just trying to be professional, that's all. She didn't answer, stared at the tip of her shoe sweeping over the hard ground. Or you can change your mind about talking to me. Malin stared at him and then she bolted her head, not knowing what to do. McAdams followed. What's up? Nothing. She faced him with tears in her eyes. Let's go Indian. I'm a vegetarian. Great. I love Indian. They walked a half mile until a collection of storefront cafes and bistros came into sight. 3 square blocks of eateries and shops catering to the college crowd. Raja's was on a Harvard Street close to Duxbury, the oldest of the 5 institutions. Once inside, McAdams' nostrils were filled with the pungent aroma of exotic spices. Malin did a once-over of the place and chose a table furthest from the entrance and closest to the kitchen, the warmest and nosiest spot in the restaurant, even before they had managed to park their butts on the chairs. A server in a black shirt and black jeans were already here with a nan on the bread. The server smiled. Buffet? Yes, Malin answered, unless you want to order off the menu. Buffet is dandy, McAdams said. Two chai? The server piped in. Yes, Malin told him. With milk? Yes, Malin barked out. The server didn't seem to notice her anger right away. She sat down while McAdams hung up the coats on a provided hook. When he came back to the table, he noticed that she was sulking. He rubbed his hand. I'm really sorry about Eli. She looked at his face and then at the tabletop. We're still in the dark. Anything that you like to tell us would be helpful. I don't know anything. If I did, I would have told you yesterday. Did he seem depressed or worried lately? No, I already told you that. Maybe on reflection you thought of something. No response. McAdams said, okay, I'll stop pressing you. I hate being pushed and I imagine you don't like it either. Talk when and if you like it. I am legitimately hungry, so I'm going up to the buffet. He stood, and so did she. Would it offend you if I ate meat? No. McAdams filled his plate with tandoori lamb, basmati rice, rada, fresh cucumbers and tomatoes, the dal of the day, saag paneer, and fresh mango and orange slices. She filled up on vegetables, fruit, and salad. When they both sat back, Melon said, "Thanks for asking pardon." The waiter came by with 2 piping hot chai teas. "Anything else?" "Waiter," McAdams said, "do you have garlic naan, by the way?" "Yes, sir." "Could you bring an order?" "Right away." After he left, Malin said, "Thank you for asking whether or not I offended if you ate meat. No problem. Don't want you to lose your appetite. If someone eats eggs in my presence, I get a little queasy." "Eggs?" "One of my half-sibs has an anaphylactic reaction to eggs. Luckily, I'm just sensitive to them. I can eat them in baking and cooking, but I can't eat them like a plain egg without getting sick." Malin nodded. "Must be hard to do brunch with you." "I don't go out a lot, so it's not a problem." He looked up and took in her face. She hadn't bothered with makeup except for a little mascara and lipstick. The blush on her cheeks were probably from the cold. As hard as he tried not to notice, he did. She was a very pretty woman in that waifish way. "You want to tell me what's on your mind, or do you want to finish eating first?" "Don't be too blunt. I would think you'd appreciate that maths people are usually no nonsense. It's the social science people that love the ambiguity. They can discuss miniature for hours and seem very happy about it. It used to drive me crazy listening to people who love to hear themselves talk. Everyone wants their 15 minutes. Right you are." She put down her fork. "How's this for bluntness? Do you have anything new in regards to Eli?" "No, I don't." "I heard you found a stack of papers with formulas behind his desk. Word gets around." McAdam didn't bother to look up. "Who told you about that little ditty of information?" "Why should I tell you anything if you hold back on me? It wouldn't be very professional if I just gave you random facts. You're really into this professional thing. I try to do a good job in whatever I do. Bully for you. No need to be hostile. I like to see those papers." "That decision is not up to me, Malin." McAdam's brain was whirling. He didn't want to seize up, so he had to say something encouraging. "But if you tell me why you want to see them, maybe I can make a case for you." She didn't speak right away. She played with her rice, shoving it around the plate. Finally, she nibbed a few grains. "I have a feeling those papers have to do with my research. I wouldn't want them falling into the wrong hands." "I can understand that. So you let me see them?" "Not my decision, but I'll tell you this. Decker is keeping them off limits to anyone in the school until he knows what's in them. We're both aware about plagiarism and academic stealing. So show them to me. I can tell you what they're about." "I'm sure you can, but I can think Decker wants someone not associated with the school to look them over." "See, that's the problem, Tyler." She leaned over and grabbed his hand. "If it's in my research, I don't want any third party seeing what I've done. The chance of someone hijacking research is very high." McAdams extracted his hand and studied her face. The blush in her cheeks had reddened. Her lower lip was trembling. "No one is going to steal your research, Malin, I promise." "How can you guarantee that?" "Because I know the man who would like to show the papers to. He's a full tenured professor at Harvard. He doesn't need to steal any research. That's what they all say. Let me talk this over with the boss. Maybe I can have someone contact you after he looks at the papers, okay? You tell him what you're doing. He'll know right away if he has something to do with your research." She bit her lower lip. "Who is this guy?" "Someone trustworthy." McAdams speared a piece of lamb. "Why do you think Eli was hiding your research?" "Eli was secretive whether it was research or anyone else's paper. It's not that our professors routinely steal data, but reading other people's research sometimes gives them ideas that they later claim to be their own. Has this happened at Needloft before?" "It happens everywhere, Tyler." She leaned over again. "I can call you Tyler, right?" "Sure. If you went to Harvard, you probably know that academia is a very evil profession." "Evil's a little strong, more like immoral." "No, evil is the right word. There are some people that will do anything to get a name, an award, or even to get published. Stealing is the quickest way to tenure if you haven't had a novel ideas in years. Professors routinely steal and plagiarize. At the very least, they take over first-year authorship when they have nothing to do with your research. As unfair as it might be, Malin, professors are entitled to put their names on any research that comes out of their labs." "That is total bullshit." "I agree, but that happens all the time. How else do you get a million publications to your name?" I paused. "Plagiarism and stealing are different animals. Do you know for sure that this happened at Needloft?" "I have very strong suspicions." "And you never told anyone?" "I told Eli. No one in authority, and get blackballed from every major graduate school. Right. I paused. Do you think that idea stealing has something to do with Elijah's sudden death? It was suicide? I didn't say that. You started to. No, I didn't. I just started to say suspicious death. So you think there was foul play, as you guys say in detective speak. Every death that's not natural cause is suspicious. We don't have the coroner's report. I can't tell you anything more because I don't know. Let's go back to my question. Do you think someone was trying to steal Eli's research and claiming it for his or her own? I think that stealing ideas is always a possibility. His idea or my ideas. Do you think it has something to do with Eli's death? Possibly. Are you worried about your safety? I can take care of myself. What do you mean by that? You're not worried, or you are worried, but you can protect yourself. That's very sporadic, Tyler. Answer the question. I'm not worried for my personal safety, but I am worried about my research. If you really want to get a feel for Needloft, Eli's death, and what's going on, you should check out the math department one by one. How many people are we talking about? All the professors and all the grad students. Needloft has grad students. It has a few graduate departments, and a maths is one of them. You can get a PhD in theoretical math here. It's not as prestigious as the big universities like Princeton and Chicago and Berkeley, but I suppose it worked for Eli. He was going for a PhD? He was studying maths. I think the degrees for him were identical. How big is the maths department? She did a quick mental calculation. There are 14 professors and 10 grad students. I paused. Yes, 24 in total. You should look at every one of them. Could you narrow down the search for us? No, I can't. In case I'm wrong, I could be accused of slander. So I want you to treat everyone equal, and maybe in your inquiries you find out other evidence of wrongdoing. I'll talk to Detective Decker about this. It would help if I had more information. It's hard to investigate people on someone else's say-so without a shred of evidence. You have your evidence. Eli hid those papers from someone. Maybe he was hiding them from you. Her blue eyes darkened. You're being deliberately provocative. I'm just asking questions, McAdams answered. You're very interested in the case. This makes it interesting in you. Tears forming in her eyes. I'm trying to help you. I know, Melon. But if you choose to get involved, you open yourself up to all sorts of possibilities. She continued to eat in silence, then she said, I know you're only doing your job. Melon, what personal thing did you want to talk to me about? Nothing other than what I told you, she whispered. I feel more comfortable talking to you than Detective Decker. Same agent history and all that. What history? McAdams thought. Okay, feel free to call me if something else comes to mind, no matter how trivial. When will you find out if it's suicide or not? I don't know. That's Detective Decker's domain. You can call him also. He's very easy to talk to. He glanced at her plate. She had barely eaten. Not hungry? Not really. I'm done. Then I'll call for the check. When he took out a credit card, she said, I can pay my own way. I'm charging it to the department. So unless you want to make a contribution to the police department to the tune of $7.79, which is what the buffet costs, let me take care of it. You won't get into trouble? Suddenly she was concerned for his professionalism. He smiled no. He raised his hand, and the server was over a minute late with the check. McAdams stood up, fished $20 out of his wallet, and left it on the table. Then he tore off the bottom part of the check for a receipt. If you think of anything else, he gave her his card. She reluctantly took it, and together they walked outside and stood in front of the restaurant. McAdams said, I think we're going in opposite directions, so I'll say goodbye. Thanks for lunch anytime. Even if it's not business. Her smile was seductive. He said, take care, Malin. Tyler, I don't mean to sound like a jerk. I'm sure most of the professors at Needloft are honest. It's just hard to know who to trust. You're protective of your work. I totally get it. The difference between failure and success can often be just a single thought. Her eyes moistened. I'm not there yet, Tyler. Eli was helping me. He was the only person in the entire place I could trust. Now that he's gone, I've not only lost a sounding board, I lost my lifeline to sanity. I have no one else to turn to. He was the only one who understood. I don't know what I'm going to do. She began to weep openly. She fell against his chest. For a moment he froze, but then he realized they were out in public, so no one would take it the wrong way. He put his arms around her as she sobbed on his shoulder. I'm so lost without him. You're a brilliant girl, Melon. You'll be fine. You don't know that. I don't know, but I suspect that's the case. He patted her back. Call me, even if you just want to talk. She put away. Do you mean that? I do. I'm very good at listening, he smiled. It's talking that gets me into trouble. If you're around me long enough, eventually I'll piss you off. Join the club. Every time I open my mouth, someone gets angry with me. I can't help it. I just say what's on my mind, she sighed. So here goes nothing. I like you, Tyler. Obviously, I have a schoolgirl crush on you for years. But now we're both adults, and I like to see who you really are. Can I take you out to dinner? McAdam's head became foggy. He should have expected it, but he didn't. He didn't want to put her off. He suspected she was up to something. So taking her out to dinner while the case was still open was out of the question. But later on, it might still, if she was genuinely interested. He let out a small laugh. When all this is over and done with my own finals, that would be a yes. What finals? Her eyes narrowed. I thought you were done with school. No, actually, I'm in law school. When Melon made a face, McAdam said, yeah, I know. It's one of those necessary evils for me. Where is law school? When he paused, she said, figures. What are you doing here in Greenberry? Officially, I am a Greenberry cop who is currently on leave. Unofficially, I'm here studying at the Decker place because it's quiet and I can concentrate. So you're not working officially there? No, I am working officially. Either you are or you're not. It's complicated. Oh, please, she mocked. It's complicated. She shook her head. Don't be so pedestrian. See, I'm pissing you off already. He checked his watch. What was that? Like 5 minutes? She laughed, maybe less. I can't do anything socially with you until Eli's case is closed. Call me or Detective Decker if you think of anything that might help us. I will, now that I have some motivation for you guys to finish up. She lightly kissed his lips. Then she kissed him again with more bravado. I've been wanting to do that forever. She walked away and leaving him standing alone with his fingers on his lips. Then he ran his fingers through his long hair and blew out a steam of hot air that misted in the cold. This is not good, he thought. This is really not good.